So when I graduated journalism school, I was one of the lucky few that actually got a job right away, which was great. And it was working for Daily Planet on the Discovery Channel, which as a science nerd and a person who wanted to get into documentaries, it was perfect for me. So perfect, in fact, that I ended up working there for 7 years. And I got as high as I could go, and I got really, really good at what I did, but I thought, okay, I want to be a wildlife filmmaker. So I can't just do these 5-minute segments, I have to do something more. So I quit, and I thought, okay, now I have to try and find someone to hire me to do wildlife films. And I did. There was a small production company out of Picton, Ontario, that was looking for someone to do a nature series on the animals that lived in the Great Lakes. And I said, I can do that. That sounds so easy. And they were like, great, okay, 8 half-hour episodes, go do it. And I was like, yeah, I can totally do it. And they're like, this is Planet Earth right here, like taking me through scenes of Planet Earth. Like, we want that, but in the Great Lakes and at like 1/100th of the budget. I'm like, yep, totally, can totally do that. Got it, done. So I went off to go try and find some stories. And the first shoot that I did was on the moose and the wolves of Isle Royale. Now, Isle Royale, if you don't know, is an island in the middle of Lake Superior. If Lake Superior is shaped like the head of a wolf, Isle Royale is its eye. And it's 90 kilometers wide. It's a wilderness preserve owned by the American Park Service. There are no roads, no houses, nobody lives there. It's just nature. It's one of the few last chunks of nature left in North America. And it's famous because of the moose and the wolves that live there. This is how they got there. So about 100 years ago, a bunch of moose swam over from the mainland. And they got there and were like, holy shit, nothing is trying to eat me. This is awesome. I love it. So they stayed and they bred and they made the island their home. Then about 30 years later, in wintertime, Lake Superior froze over, and a bunch of wolves wandered over to the island. And they went, holy shit, there's a bunch of moose here. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet. There's no bears trying to chase me away from my dinner. This is awesome. So they stayed and made the island their home, which makes it a really cool place because it's one of the few places on Earth where researchers can watch predator versus prey with no outside interruptions. So I thought, great, perfect. Great first story. Let's go. So I hired a camera guy. Now, camera guys can be a little bit tricky, and this really could have gone awfully. Luckily, it did not. But I met up with this guy. His name was Brownie, and we drove for 13 hours together in his SUV. And we drove all the way up Michigan. So if Michigan's shaped like a mitt, we drove up all the way through, up into the upper peninsula of Michigan to the northern tip, this place called Copper Harbor, Michigan, where we caught a 4-hour boat ride to get into Isle Royale. Now, we get to Isle Royale. We're tired, we're dirty. We're sharing a 1-room cabin in the middle of this island for 4 days. So we're, really trying to get comfortable with each other. And we decide, okay, well, let's go hiking. And neither of us are really nature people, but we both pretend that we are. So I've got my backpack with a bunch of lenses and batteries and water and a first aid kit, and Brownie's got the camera on one shoulder and a tripod on the other. And we start hiking, and like we're dying, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is really hard. And we keep hiking and hiking and hiking and huffing and puffing, and of course, we don't see a damn thing. And we're like, shit, we lose our jobs if we don't film the damn thing, so we kind of have to. So day 2, we call in some special help. And special help is this guy named Rolf Peterson. He is 80 years old. He is the one person who's been living on the island for the past 50 years because he is a researcher who studies the moose and the wolves of Isle Royale. So we team up with Rolf, and I'm like, okay, so Rolf, so we're gonna go find some moose and some wolves. Yeah, like, when was the last time you saw a moose? And he's like, oh, 2. I saw 2 last year. And I went, fuck, because if I don't find moose, I'm fired. And I said, okay, what about wolves? Like, how often do you see wolves? And he's like, 3 years ago I saw one. And I went, fuck. Okay, well, we'll try. We'll try our best. We'll figure it out somehow. So we start hiking, and everything's getting real foggy, and it's starting to rain on us, and we're trying to shield the camera, and we hike for like 10 kilometers and see nothing, except for a pile of poop, which didn't really excite us, but of course Rolf was thrilled, because he was like, oh, the wolves, they're eating the beavers, that's great. Like, cool. We can't film poop. We're not that type of show. So we keep hiking, and we're going, and Rolf is just smoking us, and he's like in his 80s, and he's fitter than I've ever been in my life. And he can tell that we're getting a little bit frustrated and a little bit scared, and so he's just like, well, why don't we go off trail? Like, well, it doesn't matter here. Like, let's just go in this direction. So I'm like, okay, fine. So we go in that direction, and he's got a machete out, and he's like hacking at bushes, and I'm kind of just trying to like field my way through there. And we get around this one bit of bushes, and I remember being really annoyed because they were prickly. And I sort of go around a bend, and then just 10 meters in front of me is this massive bull moose. And the moose is just standing there, just eating seagrass out of the water, just nom, 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 looking super fucking majestic, like you want a moose to look. So I'm panicking because I'm way ahead of everybody, and I'm just like, Brownie! Brownie! God damn it, Brownie! And he just like, what's going on? I'm like, there's a fucking moose! So he goes, okay, I got this. So he comes over and he sets the tripod down and he extends it up and he pulls out the camera plate, puts it on top and screws that on. And I'm just like, Brownie, for fuck's sake, record! Get this on camera! And he's like, I got this. And he puts the camera on, and then he wipes some dirt off the lens there. And I'm like losing my fucking mind because I'm like, it's gonna leave and we're gonna be fired and this is the worst. But finally he just goes, hits the record button and gets it. And the moose stays. And he keeps looking all fucking majestic, and he's just standing there. He even starts doing poses for us and stuff and like giving us different angles, and I'm just like, yes! And then, of course, this little female moose suddenly comes out behind him, and she's all pretty and prim and, like, super suspicious and is doing all these poses, and I'm just like, Brownie, there's another one! Get the fucking moose! Ah! He's like, I got it. Calm down. It's okay. I got it. And I'm just like, ah. So he gets that. And then we hear a splash on the other side. And we look quickly, and there's 3 moose fucking swimming and having a pool party right next to us. And I'm like, before I can go, Brownie, he's like, I got it. Just sit. And I'm like, okay. I'm standing there, my heart's thumping, and I'm sitting there going, okay, like, what do I need to get this show done? What do I need to make an episode? Like this, I guess. And luckily, Brownie was a pro because he was just able to get what I needed. We ended up seeing 7 moose that day, which is more than Rolf had seen in the past 3 years that he'd been living on the island. And luckily, we were able to set up remote cameras, and we got a shit ton of footage of wolves, too. And amazingly, we got all the footage we needed, and then some, to put together an amazing episode. And of course, I brought it back to Toronto and was like, see, guys? That was easy. Yeah, totally got that. And it was awesome. And that is my story of the Moose and the Wolves of Isle Royale.